Welcome, everybody, to Redesigning Nonprofit Boards for Equity and Empathy-Centered Design Workshop. I'm especially excited to have you all here with us today because this marks the kickoff workshop of SBCN and Thrive Alliance's Ready Hub, a resource really meant to build the capacity of organizations around racial justice and equity. My name is Dana L. Neal, and I am SBCN's Learning and Member Engagement Director. Before we get started, a couple housekeeping items. Just to level set with everyone. So again, if you haven't already, please introduce yourselves in the chat by sending your name, title, front organization, pronouns, and the native land that you reside on. And we'll drop the link for that in the chat as well. And next, as a continuing and evolving SBCN practice, I want to acknowledge that where I am based here in San Jose, I am on the ethno-historic tribal territory of the Tamian Ohlone, who are the direct ancestors of the lineages enrolled in the Muwekma Ohlone tribe and who are missionized into missions Santa Clara, San Jose, and Dolores. Together, let us commit to educating ourselves and advocating for Indigenous peoples, communities neglected and displaced by the U.S. government and other colonial powers across the world. We encourage you to learn more by engaging with the local Indigenous-led and serving nonprofits in your community. Next, for accessibility purposes, we do have automated closed captioning enabled in Zoom. With this, you can kind of move the captions around to wherever it makes sense on your screen, or you can disable that feature entirely if you prefer to not have it up. To do so, there should be a bar at the bottom of your Zoom screen that says captions, and you can click that button to toggle them on or off. If you're having any tech or other troubles during the session, please feel free to private message me directly in the chat. Next, if you have questions, please do use the chat box to send those throughout the session. If we don't happen to answer your question by the end of the session, our presenters have offered to follow up with you offline after the program. And before we kick off, I do want to take a moment to thank Applied Materials Foundation, whose support has made this event possible. And now I'd love to pass it off to our wonderful presenters for today, Ii Samai and Irma Zof.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here and to see some familiar names as well. My name is Ii Samai. I was a long-time Bay Area gal, but now I am about 20 minutes east of Sacramento in a little place called Fair Oaks, right next to the American River. And then Irma.
Hi, everyone. My name is Irma Zof. So happy and excited to be here. I'm in the Ohlone lands as well, on the Bay Area in Redwood City. And let's kick this off.
So we want to make sure you're all here, right place, right time, everything. So we'll share our agenda with you and go from there. All right, so we do have some big goals, and we are going to do everything we can to make sure we achieve those by the end of the session. So we want to, if you're unfamiliar, we want to introduce you to this concept of empathy-centered design and share one of the tools, and then figure out how you can use that to designing better nonprofit board member experiences. And then also be able to think about, just overall, the recruiting process, that there are a lot of different phases to being a board member. And so we're going to break down those phases and apply the tool of the journey map. And then this is what we will be doing today.
Yes, this is the agenda, and we are going to have a little bit of background and data information about nonprofits and racial equity. We are going to have a lot of exercise on journey map as time permits, and we're going to have breakouts so you can have a deeper discussion in a smaller group. And hopefully at the end, we will have time for reflection and sharing best practices with you all.
Great. Because much of this workshop is interactive, we'll have polls and breakouts and Jamboards. If you have to switch, I know this is a very busy time, especially for parents who have to do pickups and whatnot. So if you're going to switch to your phone, or if you're already on your phone, or just unable to interact with the technology, just let us know. We can figure out a way, where you can talk to us and we can type things in boards and whatnot. So we're going to be flexible with that. So just let us know how we can support your experience. All right, so let's do a quick poll to see who is here.
Yes, thank you. Well, it seems that we have a variety of people here, mostly or more than half nonprofit board members. No, then we have 41% staff, foundation, and on the other questions, like about over 60% of white people and the rest of Black, Indigenous, and person of color. Okay, thank you. This is useful.
Great. Excellent. So I'll share again.
Okay, before we continue, we're going to share a little bit more about Ready Hub and what is it. So, Yahaira, can you share with us?
Yes, of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Yahaira Ortega, and I am Thrive's Policy and Advocacy Associate. And you may be wondering, what is the nonprofit Ready Hub? Well, we are a joint effort between SVCN and Thrive Alliance to integrate racial equity, diversity, and inclusion into the nonprofit community in both Santa Clara and San Mateo counties. Together, we commit and take action to address systemic racism, discrimination, and inequity in our communities and organizations. In the future, you will find our resource page, and in there you will find assessments, guides, reports, articles, publications, and steps to get involved. Much more coming soon. Stay tuned.
And we're so grateful to be the first event under the Ready Hub. So thank you so much, Thrive and SVCN, for hosting us and inviting us to have this workshop with you. All right, so let's kick in with demographic summary. And why is this important? It's just to know where we are and why are we talking about race and racial equity, right? So this is from the Leading with Intent report, the latest one, which is about 2 years ago. And there it shows the demographics for CEOs, board chairs, and board members. And as you can see, it's over 75% white people filling out those positions. And then the rest, as you can see, it has very little participation of Black, Indigenous, and other people of color. Okay, next. And so with this information in mind, that's why we're focusing our work on racial equity today. And that's not to say that there are other dimensions very, very strong and ingrained in our systemic institutions, such as gender, age, and many others. But just because we have little time and today with you, we're going to focus on racial equity and walk with you through different tools. But as you saw, this particular dimension of race is very notorious, and nonprofit sector is not the exception, unfortunately. So we are going to give a special attention to race and ethnicity. And with that in mind, I just want to share some information from census from Santa Clara County and San Mateo in a minute. But just take a moment to check what is the composition in terms of race and ethnicity in Santa Clara County. And then let's review San Mateo County. And I know that many of you here joining us are experts on this topic. So I'm very aware. So if you want to drop a line or something on the chat, just please let us know. But this is information from San Mateo County as well, and how it is composed from race and ethnicity. And as you can see, both San Mateo County and Santa Clara County are the what before it was called minority are now the majority, meaning the white population has been decreasing over time, and to the point that it's less than 40% in both counties. But yet, if we go to the next slide, please. And this is a very old information because we haven't found more updated information, but we just wanted to know, and how is it showing up in the nonprofit, in particular in nonprofit boards, right? Since the population is like this, how is it showing out in particular in the Bay Area? So the Bay Area is showing that it has 30% people of color and Black and Indigenous people of color participating in the nonprofit. But yet, just remember that also the Bay Area has a lot of diversity, and the majority now is the historically marginalized communities. All right, and so why are we talking to this again? Is because it gives us the context of what we want to show you today about race and bring it back to our organizations, our nonprofits, our boards, and the fact that many of you are joining because you want to know how to redesign your practices and your policies to be more inclusive and have more diversity in your boards. And I read that through your comments before the session, so thank you. And we hope that we can get to many of your questions throughout the session.
Great. I am seeing a couple of comments in the chat. We will be sharing these with you. So, you know, these stats and whatnot, I know we flash by them very quickly, but we will be sharing these with you. And of course, you'll have the recording as well. And in all our slides, we cited our sources. So you're welcome to click on the links and get a lot more information. And clearly, you know, Irma and I weren't able to find a more recent example. So if you have data about nonprofit board members and also executive team composition, we would love to see it. And if you also can't find more recent data than 2008 to 2009, that might be a good sign that you know, this kind of assessment is needed, right? Just profiles are changing so quickly, demographics are changing so quickly because of gentrification and so many other reasons all across California, that is important for us to keep track of what's happening. All right. So I'm gonna just walk you through a little bit of this idea of design and design thinking, and it's you know, it's one of those things where it's become a buzz, and people use it loosely and in different ways and different fields. The way that I started understanding design tools being used for, you know, this kind of like people experience design. One of the people who shared her work with me is Vanessa Shaw, who founded the Human Side of Tech. So she was training HR professionals and, you know, people in leading leadership and development professionals in mostly tech organizations to use all those tools to get employee feedback, or, you know, figure out how onboarding processes could be improved, or how feedback or performance evaluation could be improved. And she is actually due with her second, so any day now. She's gonna be a mother again. So just sending a lot of love and gratitude to Vanessa for sharing a lot of what she knows and the hard work that she's done to make these tools accessible. So the way that she frames it is design thinking is just a problem-solving framework. It's a tool, it's a way for us to think about it. And sometimes problems that we face, you know, such as racial equity, are so complex that it can paralyze us. Design thinking breaks it down into a methodical way to go after those problems and figure out how to develop those solutions by involving the people that we're designing for. So it's not just, you know, designing for people in a room, behind closed doors without them, right? It's like actually designing with the people and making sure that every step of the way, we are understanding where we're winning and where we're failing. And often in the design world, you'll hear this phrasing, like human-centered design and empathy-centered design. And now more and more, as we look beyond human existence, it's like life-centered design. How can we make sure that the ecology on the planet is intact, right? And so you'll hear these kinds of different phrases. Today, we're going to use this idea of centering empathy. And so when we talk about empathy, we're acknowledging that human beings have complex emotions, and that when we come to interaction with the world, whether it's a product, like our phones or our like a mug or a plate, right? All the way to things like the experience of becoming a board member, or the experience of attending, college as a first-time college student in the family. Those kinds of experiences have emotions attached to them, right? So it's recognizing that humans are not just these subjects on paper or these abstract concepts, but that we are complex, and that as much as we like to think we are logical, we make emotional decisions, right? And we also want to dispel the myth that empathy is about being nice. That often, it's thought of as a synonym, that empathy is about, just getting into your feelings and about, like politely acknowledging. And yes, it is some of those things, but empathy is also about being effective, and empathy is about knowing really well the people that you're designing products or experiences for, right? Empathy-centered design is used all over. These are some of the large companies that use this kind of framework and thinking, and more we're starting to see this kind of design thinking come into the social sector, and even in education. There's been really great work, for example, with Stanford, there's a whole like liberatory design approach in redesigning K-12 education so that students have better experiences with their educational institutions. All right, before I move on to journey maps, let me just make sure we're not missing anything important in the chat. And Thrive and SVCN team, if I happen to miss something that seems timely, please stop me, interrupt me. All right, so I don't see anything in the chat, so I'm going to move on. Journey mapping is one of the tools, one of the many tools inside this discipline called design thinking. So journey map is to take something as complex as someone's for example first day of college, right? Like taking some of those experiences and everything and turning it into a visual package, so that it's easy to reference, right? And then once we can visualize where the positive and not so positive experiences are in a journey, then we can figure out where to focus our attention on, right? So for example, a lot of you buy, I'm sure, caffeinated beverages and other beverages at coffee shops. And so this is an example of a customer's journey buying a drink, right? And you'll see that it's not just one experience, it's a multi-layered, all kinds of sensory experiences happening, and there are different points of contact that are happening. And so, as soon as, parking happens, right? Like parking could be a frustrating experience or an experience we don't even think about if it's smooth, opening the door, right? The aromas, the interaction with the customer service person, the ordering experience, all the way to the quality of the product. right? There's so many things happening at once. And so what a journey map does is that it breaks down those experiences into phases. So you'll see on the horizontal line, the phases of this journey. And then on the vertical line, you see like this is enriching or not so much, and then kind of the average midline experience. And so when you do this over and over, one customer journey map may tell you much, but let's say you did this with 200 customers, right, over time. You might start to notice some patterns. For example, it seems like as soon as they enter, the temperature and the volume of the place, they might already be turned off, right, from taking that next step. They might in the future choose a quieter experience, a warmer experience, regardless of how good the drink is. Customers might be making decisions based on experiences prior, right? And so over time, you can start to figure out, where people are having not so positive experiences, and then you can choose to redesign. You can choose to follow up with customers and say what would make it better, right? And so it just helps you really invest in certain aspects of a journey. And so you're going to make journey maps. You're going to have about 10 minutes to make your own journey map. If you are a board member, you're going to map your experience all the way from being recruited all the way to, quote unquote normal. It's just like daily operations of being a board member. You might be an executive director. I know a lot of you here are executive directors, so you can map your experience recruiting board members and onboarding them, and then working with them on a day-to-day basis. Some of you are both. I know a lot of executive directors sit on boards, and so you can choose which role you want a journey map for. And you're going to just put 2 to 3 data points for each of those 3 phases. So your journey map will look something like this, a scattering of data points across 3 phases. All right. So I'll give you 2 examples, one of a very unfortunate experience of becoming a board member in my 20s, and then I'll give you a much better experience that I had more recently. So in my 20s, college student, I got recruited to join this campaign and nonprofit. I was recruited by a friend, and I had no idea what I was signing up for. I just said yes because I'm socially inclined, and I thought it would be fun. And I actually thought I would get to hang out with her a lot. And so I said yes, and I sat on the board, and I did not stay on. It was over time, I was regularly confused by the process. At that point, I didn't really know how like Robert's rules worked, and the whole process of making decisions and approving, that whole part was confusing. There wasn't a warm handoff, and so I had no one on the board that I could ask questions, and honestly, I was too embarrassed to even say I'm very lost. Can someone help me? And there also wasn't a process to really like onboard me, like these are the documents, this is what we do, this is how we make decisions as a group, and these are the committees you might be. There was none of that. And so over time, I'm pretty embarrassed to say, I just left. I didn't make an announcement. I didn't say anything. I just stopped going to the board meetings, right? Much better experience. So more recently, I sought out the opportunity. So it's very different, like I myself was ready and willing to serve. And the meeting with the ED and the founder, there was an instant connection, shared values, and it was just a very warm relational meeting. And once I did accept the position, that whole process was very smooth. We were onboarded as a cohort, so me and another board member joined at the same time, and so we were learning and asking questions at the same time. And the whole experience has been very organized. And so, for example, there's a board portal. So anytime I want to think about, oh, there was something that in the ED report, something was shared and I forget what it is now, I'm not scrambling through emails to look for, the link to the document or downloading it again. There's a board portal. I can find it anytime I want. It's all very organized. And also, I was, very specifically invited to join a committee. It was very clear how I could contribute to that committee. So it wasn't just like, we need bodies to join. Can you do it? It was a very thoughtful invitation to join. And the process has been really wonderful. And I feel valued as a board member. All right. So I hope that's a good example of what you're going to be doing. And so again, we're going to drop links. You're going to go to Jamboards, and you're going to map your journey as either a board member or recruiting board members, if you're a staff person, in 3 phases, and we'll go from there.
And just as a reminder of this journey map, the idea is that you capture your own experience. As EE was sharing with you her experience, make sure that you go back to that time when you started or when you were recruited, what happened, what emotions you were feeling, because that's part of getting into describing your own experience as a board member or even as an ED that you were helping other new board members to join. And you might be surprised to find out, emotions that you didn't know that you had, and understand why you had those emotions. That's the idea.
Just a quick instructions for people who haven't used Jamboards before. When you open the respective link, there should be like a little thing at the top that you can scroll through and click the little arrow until you find your name on the appropriate one. And then you can use the text boxes, you can use the sticky notes, you can use whatever format works for you. But let us know if you have questions about that.
And so once you're in the board, you can use the sticky note function. I find that to be a little bit easier, or you can use the text box function. So either way, whatever's easier for you. I'm sorry for messing up your board.
Okay. And if you are an ED, just to confirm, you can either journey map your experience as an ED through that process, what was your input, or you can use that experience of you can use that experience as an example, or if you have participated as a board member in another organizations, which we know that many EDs and staff members have been participating as a board in other nonprofits, use that experience as well. It's up to you. The idea is that we can map out your own journey. And let us know if you have any additional question.
Okay, it's looking like the boards are getting filled out. So if you are done, you are welcome to walk around. We're going to spend another few minutes just browsing the boards and seeing if there is a pattern emerging. All right, so look through some of the other people's boards and see if you notice anything. And if you are still working on finishing up your board, that's fine. Take your time. Yeah. All right. So now we get to do the fun part of pulling the patterns and harvesting all your hard work. As you were looking through the Jamboards, what did you notice about what was, above the line, right? Like, what were some of the more positive, easeful, rewarding experiences.
And feel free to use the chat or unmute yourself. We want to hear your voice as well.
Recruitment section, yeah. Usually there's this kind of hope, right, and excitement, and usually if you're invited, it's a really good feeling, or sometimes it's a friend, and there's, yeah, I did see a lot of that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like we're in the nonprofit sector because we care about these missions, and so yeah, just feeling some sort of alignment, resonance with the organization, the mission, how it's doing it, who it's doing it, like who the mission is helping. Absolutely. Yeah,
I think the value of personal connection with either the ED, meeting with the ED, that personal, just meeting with someone tended to be quite positive.
Yeah, I noticed that too, that there was these, it's like it was relational, right? Like these connection points meant something for people, and it usually translated into being a happier emotional experience. Yeah, great. Yeah, good point, Jessica. It's that warm invitation, and it's yeah, it is a note saying, hey, like, I think you have something to contribute, and I believe in your capability. Yeah, it's like a vote of confidence to be invited. Great. What about later, as you're getting onboarded, what were some of the positive, easeful, happier experiences?
Seems like just having an onboarding process was related as positive.
Yes, there is something, right? Yes. Yeah.
So I gotta say this. We didn't really have an onboarding process, and I put it in my board that it was really uncomfortable at first, and it really had me thinking, like, is this something that I want to do, because I never had served on a board. But I really felt like I'm glad I put myself through that uncomfortability, because it's kind of like, just like you said, you have to find people who are passionate about this, and if you're not passionate, you're gonna quit, right? And for me, it's kind of like, where do I belong here? And I feel like that shows like resilience, especially with the board that I sit on, sisterhood and engagement. Like I really felt like I really had to be our mission.
Yeah, like, because it's not all like fun and warm and fuzzy, you had to like really connect, like really believe in that mission to stick around, right? Some of those uncomfortable experiences. Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Fee. Yeah. All right. What about the experiences, of like confusion, and what did people find challenging? Right. Yeah. Right away, especially if I mean, a lot of boards are full of friends, right? And people who know each other and who are in the same networks, and so immediately, if you're a new member, you start to notice, okay, there's like some things being said between the lines, or there is a culture here, and there's something happening here, and you may not be able to always articulate it, or in your case, you were able to see like, wow, there's very little sharing of the air happening here, right? And that sort of like take space, make space might not be happening. And often that does, those kinds of dynamics and communication issues can make a lot of board members quit, right? It's like, what am I doing here, right? I'm being talked at. Yeah. And thanks for sharing. Yes. So much falls on the ED, right? Like executive directors are already having to deal with culture on the staff, accountability on the staff side, and then you're also responsible for the board side, and like being prepared, and like so much falls on you. Absolutely, it's a lot. Okay. You're saying when you were being recruited, you didn't know how much was going to be required of you, and over time, maybe you got to learn a lot more was being asked of you. Right. Yeah. There was also a pattern around the sense of not being sure if they fit in, or feeling like we'll get to work and not necessarily being equipped to get to work. Yeah. Great. Yeah. Great insights. Great insights. All right, Irma, what do you think? Anything I missed? Patterns?
I think one of the big patterns that showed up in terms of the positive once kind of onboarded, like fully on, was it being asked to do something, like given a project to work on, really utilizing, one's skills really was kind of that piece that kept people going. So kind of the opposite of what we were just talking about disengagement, but the engagement piece was like people wanted to do things. They didn't want to just be a presence.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, that's why I volunteer, right? Like I could be having dinner with my kids, but here I am at this meeting, so use me, right? Like, let me contribute, right? And that sense of like really making an impact, believing in the mission and believing that we're helping. That's why we join boards. Yeah. Great observation.
Yes. And was just taking notes that we're going to share with you about, the positive experiences and the not so positive experiences. What are the challenges that we have? And I think that just seeing everyone's experience and some of those relate to, to my own or to your own. And it's learning about where are the gaps that we have at the board level, right? Like when we are recruiting, when we are onboarding, or on the normal time when you're joining committees and you need to do the work. So there is always room for improvement. And the idea is that once you start noticing what is happening and being aware of the things that help you and didn't help you, will help you to be better at the your board at this time, right? So the idea is that you gather not only your own experience, but the experience of everyone who is participating, and just learning when you went through through the other journey maps of the people that are here, and learning, oh, sounds like interesting, like having a board, mentor or a buddy on the onboarding side, or having other things that will help. So now we are going to go into breakouts room to continue the discussion. And we have some questions to start the presentation, to ignite the conversation, right? Like just so you can learn more about each other. I'm just going to put it here before we go into the breakouts. But let me just make sure that these are, I'm sorry that they came without format here, but maybe EE, do you want to share the screen? Oh, you're sharing the screen before we go. These are the questions that we want you to have as a prompt for discussion. And so before you go, do you have any questions? And we're going to use about 10 minutes in a small group of 3 or 4. And we will see each other in 10 minutes so we can gather more information. I know that it's not enough time, and especially for this discussion, but I hope that you were able to share a little bit and discuss about your own experience and apply it to your board in the different phases. So we want to hear from you. We want to hear either in the chat, or if you feel comfortable, we want to gather your information. You can, focus on one of the questions here, or just talk in general about the discussion that was generated. So if you feel comfortable, just unmute yourself and we can share or share in the chat.
My team talked about in our group. I think a big thing was having like a buddy, or I apologize, I'm not allowed space. Some kind of either mentor or a buddy on the board to ask like questions about if they didn't get the proper onboarding, or to just ask someone about prior year, or just have a familiar face to feel comfortable in. I think that was something that was brought up that would have been nice, which I don't think was mentioned in any of our board activities. So that may be a point to add in.
Oh, good. Thank you for the suggestion. Yes, a month versus 4 months and on the board. What other discussions did happen?
We also serve as board members, and one of my board members, and we were talking about the cohort style of onboarding versus individuals, right? Onboarding throughout the year, and how it's like there's pros and cons to that. So we were just talking about a little bit about what that could mean for folks and their commitments. So we talked a little bit about that and the time of the year and stuff. So yeah, I think it was interesting that some of us have shorter onboarding periods while others, I'm going to be on a board, and she was like, oh, it's going to be like 3-4 months. And I was like, oh, wow, that's a long time for the recruitment. But, so I think just kind of deciding what that kind of timeline looks like for board members is the big decision to make. And I think could have effects on who might want to participate versus, versus maybe not.
Yes. Expectations from the beginning, right? Whether that is the time commitment, we hear, and while we were looking at some of the clarification of how can I contribute, and what is my, my time commitment? Because a lot of this position, especially board, it's voluntary. People need to know what is the time commitment and the expectation. That's right. Thank you for sharing. The use of surveys to check how it went. Of course, always important to know objectively, not what you thought or what what people say on the over a coffee, but just being more intentional about gathering that feedback, right? And it's not only on the staff that we need that feedback and that set of procedures and policies that will help us, but also at the board level. So what are the process for recruiting? What is the process for onboarding? What I'm reading here, what is required? What is the roles and responsibilities? That's what we're hearing a lot. Anyone else that would like to share? Comments here are talking about how to be more inclusive with the mentorship or just having a cohort. Others are saying about being fair, and just like I'm looking at one of the comments of saying past experience is not required. So just thinking about, okay, if it's not required, how do you onboard the people that have no experience whatsoever with being of the board? How do they know about the bylaws or the Robert's rule, if that's what you use? Just thinking about those kind of situations on your own experience will help you to know how to be ready and better for your next board members. just take notes. Some of you that haven't used, for instance, the hybrid meetings for your board. Also, it's important to have more accessibility for those that can't travel that much, or you can gather people from different locations and not just being, you know, like with the people that are nearby that are easy access. We have some best practices that we want to share with you, and that goes naturally into this discussion. Before we go there, do you want to share more?
Yes. So just so you know, we are going to share this with you, some of the themes that emerged, and not that you have to solve all of these on your own, right? Like that's why as VCN is here and Thrive is here, you know, to really make sure that some of these gaps that we're seeing can be addressed in the sector. So some of the best practices that I've seen, onboarding in cohorts is definitely one of them. And I know there are like pros and cons, and that's important to consider. Some of the pros are that, you know, a person doesn't feel like, you know, now we're pausing the meeting because I'm the only one who has questions, or I'm the only one who needs the background, and everybody else knows already, you know, that can be a very uncomfortable feeling. Whereas if it's like, well, you know, we just got these new board members, so let's slow down a little bit and get into it. There's also been really great studies. For example, the organization Atlassian, tech organization, they did a study, an inclusion study inside their organization. And instead of just, you know, spitting out the general diversity numbers, what they started tracking was people who were the only of any identity in any team. So if you're the only woman in a team of male engineers, right? If you are the only Black person on your team, in your department, if you are the only anything, then like those experiences tended to result in feeling excluded, targeted, etc., right? Like unsupported. And so a part of what they started doing was making sure that when they brought new people on, as they were, you know, going through their diversity initiative, they made sure that no one was the only. And if there were teams where they were the only, you know, they got coaches or mentors. You know, I think some of you mentioned already, just having that sort of mentor or buddy that you can go to, right? You know, in addition to the person you report to, that made a huge difference. So Atlassian's study is available. They share a lot of the best practices that they use, so you can find that. So that's one of those things, is bringing on people together, you know, especially if you have, for example, a predominantly white board, and then you're bringing on people of color for the first time. You know, just make sure that you're not doing the add and stir, right? That you're really making sure that there's like cultural changes, and there's a supportive, more inclusive way to bring people on.
Yes, and having clear expectations. And you mentioned many examples of how the lack of not being clear of what was needed, or why you joined, what is your contribution, or what do we want from you. It creates this sense of what am I doing here? Like, I'm not contributing, I'm not feeling that you know, my contributions are being recognized, because you can't even put it out there, right? So it's just making sure that you are, you know, if you are part of the side that is recruiting and onboarding and all that, make sure that you have those clear expectations. And that's why it's important to do the pre-work, right? What do I need? Like, what is missing, and why am I hiring new board members? So once you know that, you can articulate easier what you need at the board. It's not just adding people just because, or because you need the money, or you need more hands. Yes, you need more hands, you need more help, but to what particular, you know, action, or what particular committee, and so being clear to yourself and your board members will help you to be clear with the new people that are joining as well. And we hope that just knowing or doing the work ahead of time helps you to have all this experience and steps more easy for the next time you have a new board member.
Yeah, great. And I did see on one of the jam boards, you know, I forget who it was, but you took some initiative and said, hey, maybe we should inventory or do some, you know, do some sort of survey to see what the skills are, and it wasn't received. And so there's the ideas, and then there's the willingness, right? And so we can talk a lot more about that too in the future. Clear roles and responsibilities. Often, you know, this point of decision making, right? Like often is the final decision the executive directors, or does it sit in the hands of the board? You know, if I'm on the committee, am I creating recommendations to then bring back to the board, or is the committee deciding, you know? And so just being able to figure out where those decision authority sits can actually avoid a lot of unnecessary conflict. And then when you're clear with the roles, for example, you know, when you are the board president or the co-president, this is what it means, and these are the things you should be doing. That can eliminate a lot of, you know, disappointment and, you know, the accountability conversations that need to be had. And so just being very clear, almost like a job description, that can be helpful.
And actually, just to mention that I have seen a lot of boards that really have the job description right on hand. It's kind of like, you know, the second side of the staff structure to the board. You know, you have an onboarding manual, you have a job description for the board chair, for the vice chair, for the treasurer, and that helps. And especially if you are new and you are new to the world of nonprofit boards, that is like, okay, now it makes sense. Now I understand what is expected to me, and you know, it's more clear to everybody. All right, and then moving back to racial equity, diversity, and inclusion practices at the board level is key, because remember that it started at the top, and the board really needs to lead with the example, because otherwise the staff won't trust or won't follow, or they say, what's the point, right? So it starts internally about, yes, we want to create diversity, but how do we do this is very important. Being mindful that not only inviting people that look different than us or, you know, other is enough. We need to enable the space to be fair, and that means maybe challenging how we meet. You know, somebody mentioned virtual meetings have been very useful. Yes, maybe that helps. Maybe it's about not having the give and get. And I see a lot of nonprofits eliminating that, so you can have people of different socioeconomic backgrounds, and not only those that can contribute economically, but they are contributing, you know, by, you know, the commitment, their work, or, you know, just implementing those actions. It's being mindful about when you meet, right? Those that have little kids that they need to feed at 6, you know, a board meeting at 6 p.m., it's very difficult, and they need to plan a lot ahead. So how can you make sure that you are covering other aspects, so you can have people that are different than the regular that meet most of the time, or the normal? So it's just making sure that you take the time to reflect on those things that will help your board be more welcome, and that people feel that when they come, they feel included, that they feel appreciated, valued. You know, we read some of the conversations like, okay, I provided some examples of some ideas, and it seems that nobody listened, so I left, right? So many times when that happens, yes, you get people disengaged, and the board is not an exception. So just keep in mind everything that you have read. And I saw that many of you, and I know that many of you have been taking Ready, JEDI, DEI training, and just keep applying it to your own board practices.
Great. One of the other best practices is to make sure that there's some sort of representation. So if you are an organization working with young people, have a young person, in a board leadership role. If you're doing family engagement, right? If you're interacting with families a lot, there's the kind of insight, when you're intimately familiar with the issues, that only a person going through those experiences can be. It just creates such a difference in how you talk about the issues, the way that you're able to envision solutions, the way you're able to communicate those to partners and funders. It makes a huge difference. And it also brings us back into this idea of centering empathy, right? It's like we need to make sure that we don't lose track of why we're in this work, why this mission matters, and why, the stories really matter. The stories can fuel our work and motivate, and it can, that sort of relational engagements can motivate a board member to stay on.
It's linking the mission with the day-to-day work, right? And it's also sharing any other information that it's useful, that so people feel that they are part of the organization. What is the history that you have, and what are the things that made you who you are as a board, and you take the time to onboard them and walk with them. That's part of, like having a cohort, and it's easier because you don't train one by one, but it's, in cohorts. These are some of the best practices that we have seen in boards that has helped, but I'm sure that you with your experience have many more. Please feel free. We have a few more minutes. If you have one that has worked for you, share it in the chat. But otherwise, I think that we are coming to an end for this session.
Yeah, great. And so we're going to do a quick checkout.
Sure.
Let's do
yes.
it. So.
All right. So if you have one takeaway from this training, this session, just put it on the chat. Or if you have a commitment that you want to implement right away at your board, there's something about writing. So please write it on the chat, or just write it on your own so you don't forget. And you can continue this work, this practice, and remember that this tool can be implemented not only for the dimension of race and ethnicity, but also to other dimensions that you want to integrate at your board. It's a tool that we hope that you can use to increase racial equity, diversity, and inclusion, not only at the board level, but in your environments, wherever that is, staff, organizations, and your communities. So thank you so much.
Thank you, EE and Irma, so much for that really amazing and engaging session. I know I learned a lot, and really excited to see how you all continue to put what you learned into practice. But lastly, feel free to contact SDCN and Thrive teams at any time with other questions, needs, or feedback for us. Thank you all so much again for sticking with us through 5:30. We hope to see you at future Ready trainings and other SDCN and Thrive programs. Have a good night, everyone.